Welcome back to the We Don't Give AF podcast. I'm Stephanie Tejada.
And I'm Jaclyn.
So let's get into our first segment, fan or troll. So somebody asked, do you still do food competitions? So this is a fan, and I did a food competition on Bad Girls Club. I went to that place called Fat Sal's, and I ate a gigantic sandwich. And I had done a lot of competition. Like I did a hot dog one. I ate like 75 chicken wings once.
Wow.
Like, I'm a fat ass, y'all. Like I can eat. Not anymore, okay? Because the bitch got thick and I can't just eat like how I used to. Like I'm just not in the same shape. As you get older, you start getting more curves. You gain a little more weight. So no, not anymore, honey, because I can't handle it. Jaclyn, you ever done a food competition?
No. I think I could definitely crush with certain foods. Like
I feel
think
like
I
you
could
do good with wings.
I think that I could do good with oysters.
Oh, yeah.
I can knock it out of the ballpark with some oysters or something like seafood, maybe clams. But if it's heavy, like sushi, no.
Oh, no. It's
too
so
heavy.
Fat. So fat.
Pizza. I might be able to eat a whole pizza.
I've eaten a whole pizza.
I've definitely eaten.
Not even in a competition.
I've eaten a medium pizza. I've definitely done it. But if it's like too thick and has too much shit on it, then no, I wouldn't be able to. All right. So on to our next one. Extra. Let's talk about it. Aliens in Miami.
Oh my God, did you see this? So there's a video right now. It's going viral. It was all over the news of a giant alien-like figure in downtown Miami, and it's like hundreds of cop cars and ambulances and helicopters. Like it was a shit show. It looked like a sci-fi movie. And people are freaking out because they think they're real aliens. Like, so there's a theory that it was like a prank, like somebody had like a projector thing.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's Miami. They're all on drugs.
That's what I'm saying. And I also feel like, because I saw the video and it just looks like a shadow. You don't really see like a physical thing. That's the thing about these aliens, y'all, is these pictures are never clear.
People are so obsessed with aliens.
They're never clear. Like we have
when
yet
they
to
really
see
show
a real
up.
clear photo of an alien. So I just don't believe it. And I also feel like if it was an alien, why all them cops wasn't shooting? Hundreds of cops and none of them shot? Like I don't believe it. All right. Our next segment is called Petty Please. So, did you see this clip of the guy who jumped over the judge's thing and attacked the female judge?
Yes, I did. What a knucklehead.
He was like a squirrel monkey, just jumped over that shit. And then the funny thing is right before he does it, she's talking about how he got 9 felonies, misdemeanors, domestic violence. And now you're going to have this charge of assaulting a fucking judge.
Yep. What a dummy.
You know
Maybe he wanted to
mean?
make it an even number.
And who's even pettier than that man, if you watch the video, is the 2 old men who get all close and they're just leaning on the little table watching and not helping. They're literally like this, watching the old lady get her ass beat and not doing anything. They're pettier than the guy who attacked the lady. Welcome to our first ever interview. We're calling this segment We Give AF because we do. Please welcome our very special guest, Brian Burkhardt.
Thanks for having me, ladies.
Did I say your last name right?
Yeah,
Okay.
very good, very good. Yeah.
So we asked viewers to send us some questions. So one of the questions they wanted to know is, what mafia were you in? Was it the Russian? Was it a Sicilian? They wanted to know which.
Well, I grew up in New Orleans, and so I guess you could call it the New Orleans Italian Mafia. It was very kind of separated from the rest of the United States as far as like the culture of it and whatnot. But I was an associate. I never was like a made guy or whatever, and it was like on the way. It was. Even in the 80s, like a lot of the older guys that were in it, they weren't like, I guess you could say, doing stuff with us because they wanted to stay away from drugs. They already had all their money from like gambling and stuff like that. And so like drugs was always like a big hot button for them. And our generation was like the ones that like started, wheeling and dealing and heavy pot.
You guys paved the way.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was a bad trailblaze,
I wouldn't say it was a bad trailblazer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I was part of the culture of using also. I wasn't just like, selling.
Yeah.
So like you can kind of rationalize a little bit of the morality if you use it and sell it.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm wouldn't do this if, whatever.
It's no different than working at a department store and getting a discount. You know?
I agree. That's one way of looking at it. But yeah, like I grew up in that culture. My mom was from a real tight Sicilian clan. I actually, it's really interesting when you're born into it. Like you taught things at a very young age. Like you taught to lie, you taught to steal, you taught to like kind of like hide things. You taught not to like be very to broadcast. Like everything I'm doing today goes against all the things that were ingrained in me as a kid, And so it's one of those things in life, Also, too, it's a very antiquated way to raise people, raise children.
Yeah.
Now there's no reason for the mafia. The mafia had a purpose at the turn of the last century. It was to kind of protect the immigrants and stuff.
Sure.
And and nowadays it's non-existent. It's more of a ceremonial thing. Like if somebody says they're in the mafia, it's like the equivalency of watching those people dress up and fight the Civil War. Like it's kind of a joke. Obviously, with cameras and technology and phones, it's impossible to do anything that's like, I don't know. That very seldom is there a killing anymore. And in New Orleans, just to draw a distinction, like the New York Mafia, well, when you're dealing with a city with like 10 million people, you have multiple degrees of separation from people. But in New Orleans, killing wasn't like murders happened a long time ago, but it was people were too closely connected by, you only knew like maybe one other person that knew a person. So to kill somebody, it was too incestuous. And so most of the time, people would just kind of hammer out the differences. Whereas when I got to federal prison, I associated with a lot of the New York people, and it was a totally different culture as far as how they deal with stuff, and the violence, the level of violence and all that stuff. It was much more, I guess you could say just a little more hardcore. We were laissez-faire, I guess you could say.
It sounds like a lot of work, though.
It's a lot. You know what? It's not easy money, in the end. There's no such thing as easy money because, like, you end up like losing sleep, losing years of your life in the pen.
Yeah,
it's not easy. It's most of the people that are gangsters too. A lot of them are like really hard work and they have legitimate businesses and they moonlight. And it's more or less it's a weird commitment. It's like cultish. It's very like, for instance, my cousin, who I was very close to, my uncle was really like high up and he was looked up after, and my grandfather was too. And in the end, it's like you want to end up where your people that you love the most, let's say they die and go to hell, you want to follow them to hell if you really love somebody. and no, it's true. Like, you want to be in the same place when you're in love with somebody. You want to be in the same place with them no matter what the circumstances are, usually.
Not really, because
I don't know about that.
Because if they get locked up, you can learn to love someone else.
Very true.
Yeah, well, women have a different outlook on it. It's kind of...
So you think that men are more loyal and
if a woman got arrested, you think they're going to be cheating while she's in jail?
Women. That's why women aren't really... there's very few women who will ever propose to be in the mafia.
Yeah.
Because of that one reason is that they... in Sicily, it's... the women are a little more hardcore. They'll go do 9 years in prison rather than open their mouth.
You Italian. This one got Italian blood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely ingrained in you. It's part of like the fabric of who you are. It's like, Muslims, they wake up and, do chants 5 times a day. We do some ridiculous things too,
So, when you were in prison, somebody asked, they were curious to know, is there a lot of gay sex going on in prison?
Is that like a
Oh, yeah,
stereotype?
that's
Like the whole
definitely-
don't drop the soap thing?
Well,
is that?
you know, it's actually like a whole clique. Like there's different cliques in prison. And, you know, they have what they call the punks. The punks are like strictly like stone cold. I don't want to say the F word anymore. I'm like very politically incorrect as it is, you know, whatever. But I'm gonna,
that F
I know your audience. I know your audience is a different demographic from what, but anyway, there is like a huge segment of that. Part of it is voluntary, and part of it is people that get turned out. You know, turned out is like when you go in and like you may be weak, and like you don't a master politician, you can't align yourself with people who can protect you. Mm-hmm. And what happens is you become preyed on, and most of the time after it happens the first time and you get turned out, then you're officially like a jailhouse punk. And you like get your hair, they make you whatever. I saw a lot of that. Excuse me. Also, there was a real interesting character that I was locked up with. This is in 1990, before I guess transitioning was so in vogue, I guess. He was robbing banks to pay for his sex change operations. And I was like, I was in this Fort Worth, Texas, which is like, it was a medium security federal prison, but they had like a hospital. So they had like people that it was like not controlled movement, where like every time you'd leave your cell, like they had handcuff you and bring you somewhere. It was like kind of like relaxed. And I was taking a piss and I looked next to me and there was a guy standing with tits. And I was like, long blonde hair and tits. It's like 2:00 in the morning in the bathroom. I was like, what the fuck? Anyway, there was also like love triangles too in prison. Like, because
so like Orange is the New Black is kind of accurate, huh?
Damn.
yeah, I never saw it, but yeah, they have love triangles in prison. So you say, how'd you end up in LA? Well, they had a comedy and talent show in federal prison at Fort Worth on Memorial Day weekend, 1992. And I was a 21-year-old kid at the time. And, you know, the most people, they do their first set at like a coffee shop or a bar or whatever. The first time I ever tried stand-up comedy was in prison at a talent show. And I went up there and they had bands and whatever. And I did this really great set. It was like maybe 5 or 7 minutes and whatever. I won. And I thought I had my whole life planned out after that night. You know, I had all these imaginations and what's all these dreams, you know, like I'm going to be this huge comic or whatever. So fast forward, I get to Las Vegas in 1997. And that's when I was like trying to really break in. And I had some successes. Comedy's like really tough. It's a confidence game. Mm-hmm. Like if you have some bad sets, you know, like you can like get spun out. And my stage name was The Convicts Comic. And I mainly did like a lot of jailhouse humor, stuff like that. And that's where I met like the subject of my documentary. His name was Vinny Favorito. And so I got Vegas'd out. I was in Vegas for, let me rewind. I get out of prison in 92 and I'm like, I'm done with this life. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go back. I don't want to be living my life as in and out of the penitentiary. Mm-hmm. I put a big tattoo on my back and it was like a ridiculous thing. I planned that like every time I go away, a balloon would be popped. It was like a bad art project. It was like a bad art project. And it was a clown with a big bunch of balloons. And every time I get locked up, I'd have a pop balloon.
Do you still have this tattoo?
Yeah, I do.
How many balloons are up there?
I never had any of them pop because when I was in there, I was like, this is the dumbest idea ever.
Like how you unpop a balloon that's tattooed on you.
Yeah, well, no, you just get a new tattoo of a pop balloon. Like, you know, so Whatever. So I had this epiphany that I don't want to live this life anymore. After a few trips to the hole and doing like some solitary confinement and really like getting into some brawls and whatever. And it's like, whatever, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I finished my paper, my like supervised release with probation, and I fly. I'm like, fuck it. I bought a one-way ticket to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I lived in the West Indies for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then I was like, you know what? I want to go to L.A. Mm-hmm. And so when I was down there, I was going out with this chick. And so we were going to move to L.A. together. And we had this horrible flight from Puerto Rico to JFK. And she wouldn't get on another plane. Because she didn't want to fly in the first place. She'd never been on a plane.
I hate flying too. I feel her pain.
So she talks me into taking a bus from Port Authority Manhattan to L.A.
Oh hell no.
Hell way worse
I
than
know.
a plane.
So, okay.
Oh, God.
So anyway, we make it to Vegas. And I'm like, listen, we got to take a break here before I kill. We were going to kill each other. So I was in Vegas. That pit stop lasted 3.5 years before I got to L.A. We literally stopped to take a shower, and I was there 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, no, and so it was, and LA was really, I got here in 99, and it was, obviously all cities are transition and they different, but the vibe and the interpersonal relationships people here have in LA are timeless. Like you can read books from like John Fonte from the 1920s, and they describe like how people interact with each other, and it's the same. Like buildings change, different things change, but LA has that vibe.
For sure, I would say so. And same with New York City.
Yeah, they have that vibe. And also too, people say LA's flaky and this and that, and like, how do you live out there? Because I have a lot of friends that never left New Orleans and did in different parts of the country. And they're like, how do you live out there? It's so flaky. And I'm like, I have a philosophy of a theory about why it's like that is because everything cascades off of the film industry here, like the culture.
Yeah.
And every other industry you're in, you can do like an audition, and if they don't call you back, that means they don't want you.
Yeah.
In every other industry, you could put a lot of work into something. They'd be like, hey, Jaclyn, we really like what you did.
Yeah.
We appreciate all the work you put in, but like we're going to go in another direction. And you're good with it.
Yeah.
But in LA, nobody calls you back.
They don't tell you that you didn't get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
you're like, well, I guess
so
not.
I believe that's the whole genesis of how that flaky culture began.
That's
is,
true.
is like people not calling you back from auditions and stuff.
That's true.
So the casting directors flaked first.
Yeah, exactly. I think they set the tone for the whole city for like the last 100 years, probably. Oh, I want to talk about the ketamine.
Oh, okay.
Like Matthew Perry OD'd on ketamine.
Is that what he OD'd
he
on?
ended up
I
ODing
thought
on?
that was impossible. I'll tell you why. Because this is newsflash, okay? Ketamine hydrochloride was like this substance that was like very unregulated in the early 80s. Because first of all, veterinarians and doctors wouldn't dream that anybody would take it.
Yeah.
Because it's like such a bizarre thing. And if you like hallucinogenics, like if you, like I used to do a lot of drugs. And like if you do like LSD, that's like a 12 or 15-hour commitment of that you're going to be in another space.
Like acid?
Yeah.
Acid.
What
I've
type
done
of
acid.
trips would you have on LSD? Like, were they happy trips?
Well, it
They were
depends.
delusional.
It depends. It depends on the company you're with. It depends where you are. It also depends on how people can handle the drug. You've heard of people having a bad trip.
Yeah.
I would be terrified because I had
You'd
a
have a
bad
bad
trip on
trip.
a weed cookie.
Yeah. So like
No.
you've experienced that. So you can imagine like 4 or 5 people that have taken like a hit of acid, and one of them kind of goes off the reservation. And the whole thing is that you have to pull them back in. If you don't, and you almost have to have like a shaman-like quality to deal in that as far as doing it as culturally.
Yeah.
Because if you're not good with like heavy situations, dialing it down, shrinking the head, and pulling somebody back in, it could get really dangerous. People get hurt.
Yeah.
All kinds of shit. And so what happened was LSD, first of all, the best acid used to come from the Deadhead scene. In the 60s and 70s, all the great LSD that would be in any market was like originated from like the people who followed the Dead. And so, make a long story short, LSD also is like one of the most inexpensive drugs there is. Because like you could take like $5 and buy a piece of paper this big and be out of commission for like
8 hours.
Oh,
Wow. So then how come homeless people aren't on LSD when they're on meth? Why are they all on
meth
meth?
is like a speed, and it's more intense. It zooms you.
But meth is, I would say it's probably more money. I mean, I don't know because I've never done meth, but I'm guessing it's
meth
more
is
money
cheap.
than
Meth is like
it's
kind of
cheap.
It's like cocaine is what it like. I guess you could say if you can't smoke coke, the next thing that you can smoke is meth. I've never smoked meth. I've
never
smoked coke.
touched meth.
But it's a real cheap, dirty drug. That's at least its
gross.
reputation. Yeah, it's gross. I've accidentally did a bump. Somebody gave me a bump. I thought it was blow, and I did a bump, and I was up for like 15 hours.
Oh my God.
And it burned my nose. I was like, what the fuck was that? And they were like, meth. I was like, you motherfucker, man. I was mad.
And was it a different feeling than
Oh
coke?
God, yeah, it's the worst. It just like makes the way you. Yeah, it's really it's nasty stuff.
Yuck.
And then so I guess you could say what happened in the early 80s is the United States government, society as a whole, started to make cocaine taboo. In the 1970s, it was chic, Studio 54. Everybody was doing it.
People who had it were like sophisticated,
it was
ritzy.
mainstream. And what happened was in around 81, 82, it became where everybody turned against it, taboo. People was freebasing, which is smoking rocks and freebasing. Like somebody will like argue with you that crack and freebasing are different. They basically the same thing.
I feel like coke has never been like I don't feel like it's taboo. I feel like it's like a sign you made it.
Well, you're right, because like if you've ever had a lot to drink, it's great to have a bump to straighten up if you got to drive home or something. No, it's really. Or like,
I've tried it.
Yeah, it really
It'll
does.
wake you right up. It was like eating coffee.
It does. It trumps everything. Like as far as what you're on. Like if you're drunk or whatever, you do a bump, boom, it brings you back to square one.
But I think the thing about cocaine, and that's why I only like tried it like the one time that I did, is because it's such a short high. So you got to constantly do cocaine.
It has residuals for me. Like if I do it, sometimes like I can't. It depends on how clean it is, how much it's been stepped on. But sometimes I'll do a bump and then like I can't fall asleep later.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was like really high and like, okay, I'm ready to party. And then like 30 minutes later, I felt normal. I was like, this is why people like get addicted to this so easily, because you got to keep doing it to maintain that same level of high.
I've only tried it twice, and one time I put it on my gums and it made my tongue numb. But I thought it was kind of cool. But it really doesn't have a big effect on me because I'm ADHD. So I think it's because it's a stimulant. It just makes me normal. It doesn't really do anything crazy to me.
And it's been in society before. Like it was popular in the 1920s. And different things like the original like Coca-Cola recipe, Coca-Cola
Actually had cocaine in it.
Yeah, actually did. And like even like some medicines like that are prescription, they have it. Like there's an eye medicine that has cocaine in it. Generation X, I'm Generation X. We're known as the first me generation, the real selfish assholes. And we were the ones that like kind of like transitioned. Our drug of choice at nightclubs became ecstasy, not cocaine. Mm-hmm. You know, cocaine was the generation before us. Ecstasy was popular in the 80s. And what happened is obviously all these people in nightclubs who are, I guess, you know, cops or whatever, they're like, what are all these people on? And so finally, you know, it's like when anything else, they kind of delve into it a little bit. And, they made it illegal in 87. So it was like one of those things that wasn't illegal. You could buy it at the bar. It was like in Texas.
To buy at the bar?
Yeah, at the bar. Like I remember going to Houston, Texas, and they used to sell it at the bar. Like
what?
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
Well, yes and no. Yeah. So anyway, we got kind of caught up in that whole thing of selling MDMA and whatever it is. We used to get all different kinds of batches. People were always like trying to make new stuff, and there was never like one Betty Crocker formula. And sometimes you get like different batches, but that's how I eventually kind of got in trouble. And I came home. I was going to college, and I came home, and it was like the movies where there's cars everywhere, and they're like, "Are you Brian Burkhardt?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Could you please turn around?" Of course, you have the right to remain silent. Yeah, there is your rights.
How many times have you gotten arrested?
Yes.
About 13 or 14.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you know it's coming. Like when I get a
Do
ticket.
you like feel it? Do you get like a sense like,
Oh,
man,
yeah.
I think it's
Oh.
time.
Yeah,
Like a tingling or something?
I got arrested here in Beverly Hills. I want to say in 2003, and I was up again. I was in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard in a 7 Series Beamer that died, and I was trying to get it in neutral to get it on the side of the road. I had traffic backed up in every direction. Mm-hmm. And so the cops come and they're like, "Hey man, what's going on?" I was like, "Man, the car died. I'm trying to get it out the road." And they were like, "Oh, you have your license with you, whatever?" And I pulled out my license and gave it to him. I wasn't thinking. And so like he comes back and he's like, "I got a warrant for you for."
Oh my God.
He goes, "I got a warrant for you for grand theft." And I was like, "What?" I was like, is it a U.S. territory or a state? And he goes, "It's the state of California." I was like, "Oh." I was like, "What's this about?" So I ended up getting locked up in Beverly Hills lockup. It was a real joke too. Oh my God, what a soft joint that is. It's like they bring you like a big tray for breakfast and you have like...
That would be Beverly Hills.
Yeah, and they apologize.
They're giving like kombucha and like organic eggs.
They apologized because the remote was broken in the TV room.
Damn. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're gonna get arrested,
We're real
go
sorry.
to Beverly
You go to
Hills.
Beverly Hills.
Yeah, but I've also been in rough spots too,
Yeah.
It hasn't all been nice for the lockups. I did a lot of time in Orleans Parish Prison, OPP, which is like one of the roughest joints ever. Like when you have top bunk, there's 2 people sleeping under you. The bunks are like 3 high. So it's like really overcrowded and it's like, I'm a white boy, so it's like 95% black. So you got to know how to roll the dogs a little bit just to like kind of stay above water. And like, even though I was connected and stuff, they test you and stuff, but that's life. They test you everywhere.
So I have a question. Like in these movies, these mobster movies, you always see like when they go to prison, they have like access to like a real kitchen, fresh ingredients. They make their own sauce.
That's
Like,
artistic liberties with filmmaking.
So that's not valid.
That's like the level, it was embellished. Like, yeah, you can pay guards to bring shit in, but for the most part, it's never like that.
Like in Goodfellas, where he was like,
Yeah,
that
that was just too over the top. That was
Okay.
for art. That was to have cinematic impact. But like there was a version of it, but it wasn't near there. Also, too. Like, it's like anything else in life. If you have money, you can get whatever you want most of the time.
Yeah.
Very true.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'll say this about the feds. Like, whenever you hear somebody get locked up, and you say there's a big difference between doing state time and federal time. Mm-hmm. Federal time, you're with a lot of more sophisticated criminals. The crimes are usually more
Amateur.
no,
Like white collar,
white
like
collar.
scamming,
Also, like
Bernie Madoff
organized
type
crime.
stuff.
Yeah, and then like when you're in state, it's the good thing about state is that there's parole in a lot of states. So like if you get a 10-year bid, you can get out in 3.5 years or 4 years. But if you get locked up in the feds, you got to do like 85% of your time.
Oh God.
So it's not. So it's like, do I want to live like plush or do I want to get out early? So it's like.
Got it. So you
can't
deal
have
with
it
the
both
shit and
ways.
you get out earlier.
So if you're gonna do a crime, you got to think about which do
Go
I
to
wanna
a
do?
ritzy area, apparently. Go to Beverly Hills or one of these ritzy areas so you can have a better chance of being in the bougie prisons.
You'll like this. So anyway, when I got locked up in Beverly Hills, the grand theft was actually over a bar bill at a fancy nightclub in Beverly Hills. I actually
Grand theft.
Yeah, it was. I had a $12,000 outstanding bar tab at this fancy club in Beverly
You
Hills.
dine and ditch. That's not.
So I canceled my card. Actually, it was the one I gave them for bottle service. I canceled the card, and I was like, "Let's get out of here," you know. So I get to court Monday morning, and they didn't. They knew they could. They that was the first time. Oh God, that was the first time technology really caught up to me because I never told anybody like my record or anything. I always lied about it because my name was misspelled with the feds, and I would float through things. But that was the first time I came across the electronic scanner for the fingerprints. And they were like, "Have you ever been arrested before? Have you ever been in trouble?" And I was like, "No."
And then they pull your shit up.
And all of a sudden, I get to court Monday morning. They're like, "All right, dude, we know who you are. This is what you're gonna do." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to trial."
Oh my God.
And they were like, "If you go to trial, you might end up doing because of your background. You might do 2 years because of this." They were trying to scare me, and I was like, "That's okay." I said,
I've done worse.
Yeah, I was like, "Fuck it."
That's nothing. That's great.
Yeah, and I was like, "Let's do it. I'm ready. Get the jury in here. I'm ready for jury selection, and whatever. I'm ready for jury selection." So, the public pretender or public defender, whatever you want to call him, goes back to the DA, and he's like, "This guy's not gonna cave." And so they tell the judge, and so they end up dismissing the case because they didn't want. It was for a few bottles of liquor. You know, they weren't going to make a big.
It's not that big of a
Yeah,
deal,
even
right?
though the bar tab was high,
It's
it was
high,
like
but-
2 bottles of vodka.
Whatever.
We're not going to
little Grey Goose.
or whatever. So that was my experience here. I've been on trial for a hit and run here. That was interesting. I beat that case, but the secret to beating a case is jury selection. I've been in enough.
absolutely.
If you get the right jury, like you want to kick, when they doing jury selection, you see an Asian on the jury and you're a defendant, you got to get that motherfucker off at all costs.
God.
Asian. No, I'm serious.
So they're always gonna say you're
No,
guilty.
Asians go along with whatever the government says. That's why fucking China is taking over the world. They got one motherfucker that tells them what to do, and they all march to his song. So if the prosecutor points at me and says that guy did that, the Asian guy's gonna fucking you toast. So and you get sick. You get
Good to know. These are great tips.
No,
you
these
guys.
are great tips.
No, they really are.
I fired an attorney sitting next to me. When I was going through my divorce, I was like, dude, I've been in the fucking box enough times to know that you can't fucking do dick. I was like, leave me alone. I said, I'll take over from here.
Wow.
You know, I fired lawyers right in the middle of court.
Good for you, though.
Because I know a good lawyer, man.
Well,
you
you've
know,
had experience, so
yeah,
you do
exactly.
know.
It's like you got to talk up. You got to call time out when you're getting killed. You know, it's a certain mindset.
Yeah.
You know.
So I have a question because you kind of said that the mafia looks out for their community and things like that. How do you guys give back with what you do? Because
Well, they don't really give back. That's a miss. That's no giving back. It's all on the take. They make the neighborhood safer a little bit, maybe
Okay.
in the old days. But
Yeah.
for the most part, everybody's on the take. It's all about money. If you've been in it long enough, you realize it's all bullshit. You know, people that are really in it, and they realize in the end it's bullshit. And
So is it kind of like gang culture then? How gangs supposedly exist to protect their neighborhoods?
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
It's every culture has their version.
Yeah.
It's not unique to Italian culture. They have different rules, different guidelines, but for the most part, it preaches the same thing. Don't rat. Be loyal to your friends. Obviously, violence is always on the table.
I think there are good values behind the mafia overall.
Well, it is. Omerta is actually, a lot of people think omerta is just not ratting or keeping your mouth shut, but it's also just being a gentleman, like with women and different things. Omerta could be me, like, let's say like you have a girlfriend and a wife. If you're not paying enough attention to your wife, you could be shunned upon.
But you can see, here's the thing, Brian, and you got to tell them you can't do omerta or have a wife and a girlfriend unless you got money.
Well, yeah. When you got money, you're funny, and when you broke, you're a joke.
See?
Yeah. You know what?
But could your wife have another side man? No, they get whacked.
They get whacked.
See how unfair that is?
Yeah,
It's a double standard.
It's totally. You know what though? A lot of cultures have double standard.
Absolutely.
I was in China just like these past 3 weeks, and I didn't know that polygamy was legal for like a long time in China. Like people had multiple wives until the revolution in 1949.
You know, it's so funny you bring that up. I was watching the show. It's called Sister Wives, and it's about a polygamous family. And they actually had to like flee Utah because this federal case opened up against them.
Yeah.
And they had to like literally drive and move their whole family in 3 days to Las Vegas because of that.
Well, you know, the difference between Arabs having multiple wives and Americans is that the American wife can move on and like have a new husband. But in like Saudi Arabia, they have like 4 or 5 wives.
Yeah.
Once they finish, that person is like claimed, and like I guess it might be more modernized now because everybody is modernized, and I don't care who you are. There's very few people that aren't, I guess you could say, trying to be more global and modern. You know.
So, Brian, tell us about this documentary.
Oh, anyway, the name of the film is called Vinny Plays Vegas. It's a sequel to a documentary that I did in 2005 called Poker Bustouts. That was shot during the height of the poker boom. Y'all might be too young, but in like the early 2000s, poker was like one of the hottest subjects in the world. It became mainstream. And the movie I did was trying to depict what it was like to be a real professional poker player, that it wasn't glamorous, that you're not winning hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was like you in and out of like homeless shelters, basically, in Vegas, you know? And so what happened was one of the subjects was this guy named Vinny Favorito, who was a comedian. And he was like the main guy in it. And like we revisited everybody in the film, and it kind of showed like the destruction of gambling. Gambling is the most dangerous human vice. You know why? Because if you have a drug or alcohol problem, you only can do like $500 or $1,000 a night before you have a heart attack or pass out. But with gambling, you can cripple generations of wealth in 1 second. And everybody wishes you were dead.
It's true.
Oh, it's the worst. Trust me, I've had it's like the worst.
Yeah, there's someone in my family who's so addicted to casino, she had to get herself banned to not spend money. She was like, please ban me from here. Like, I want you to never allow me in this place again.
Wow.
Yeah,
See, for me, I don't
scary.
like gambling money in a casino, but I like gambling in life.
Yeah.
Like, I like taking
yeah.
It's a
risks
smarter
and
thing,
gambling.
though, to
That's
do it like that.
that's what I mean.
But
Yeah.
I don't like
casino. When you get out of bed in the morning, it's a gamble. You know,
Yeah.
like literally.
So is this documentary going to, like, where would we be able to watch it?
Well,
How would
right
we
now,
find it?
I have a distributor right now that's trying to place it with Comedy Central because
wow.
it's also about the death of insult comedy, because Vinny Favorito was the heir apparent to Don Rickles. He was like the last line of like people that like pick on people in the audience, and they'll be like, you know. So what happened is he basically would have a show. He had his own showroom at the Flamingo Hotel in Vegas, and he would pick on people. And if somebody said, I own a business, he would invite them for a drink and borrow money from them and then gamble. To make a long story short, he borrowed millions of dollars from all his fans, and he couldn't pay them back.
From his fans.
Yeah, like from his fans. Let's say you went to a show and you got, he was one of the funniest of his generation too. A lot of people don't know who he is because like his career got stymied because he had this horrible gambling problem and he couldn't really evolve as an artist.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, like when you have the monkey on your back, whether
Yes.
it's drugs or whatever it is, your headspace and bandwidth is taken up where you can't evolve.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's really hard. And so that's what the story of wasted talent, and it's also of the death of insult comedy. And it also has like a real cool mafia thread in the movie because
Sounds interesting.
yeah, it came out really good. I've done a lot of film projects, and this is by far like I felt like my best one. It was like I got to a point where it took like 5 or 6 years to finish it, and I got I guess you could say where as far as I could get it, and we'll see what it does. You know. In the end, you got to step back and just like accept that you brought it as far as you can, and let's see how it performs. Because you know everybody has it's like having a kid. You know, you think your kid's great, and then
You could be raising an asshole. That's what I
Yeah.
say. You don't know
exactly.
who your kid's gonna be.
My kid's an asshole too. I got
Yeah.
a 12-year-old. No, she's great actually, but like she took after me.
In what way?
It's in a lot of ways. My ex-wife hates me for a lot of reasons, but every time she looks at my daughter, it's like a mini me. You know, it's like, oh my God. It's a reminder, you know. But anyway, it's funny. That's life. What else we can talk about? What are y'all doing? You know what? Y'all live in LA?
Yeah, we're in the LA area. We do stand-up comedy as well. This is our first podcast, like officially together. We have our spoof talk show that we host. Is these psychotic characters. It's called The Sociopath and a Psychopath, and it's like a parody talk show that we do with this platform called OFTV. And yeah,
Cool.
That's you're our first official guest.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
You know, I'll tell you with comedy, it's real interesting. You know, like whenever you have a set or whatever, and you have you always hear comics, they get off the stage and it's like, oh, that wasn't my crowd or whatever. It's like whoever's sitting in front of you, that's your crowd. It's a bottom line thing. If you don't make them laugh, I don't care if it's 80-year-old ladies. I don't care who it is.
That's a good way to look at it.
You have to like conform to the crowd.
Yes.
You don't tell them what you want them to hear.
Yeah.
You may have something that's funny that they enjoy, and that's your job as a comic. And I haven't been on stage in a while, but it's such a arbitrary thing. Like one night the material works great, next night falls on deaf ears, you know?
Yeah.
If you've done enough sets,
So sometimes I look at a crowd and I'm like, I'm not going to do that joke because this is not going to work with this crowd. Like you can just tell.
That's great.
So absolutely, that's great advice for sure.
And you know what else is interesting is when you sitting in the back of a comedy showroom, you can tell how funny somebody is by how the crowd is sitting in their seats and how they move. And
Yes.
when somebody's
their
really
heads.
rocking the house,
They're like,
people are like, everybody's rocking and stuff.
Yeah.
You know? And it's silhouettes against
that's
the light.
true.
It's so interesting, you know? It's and you know, I guess one of the things is you'll hit these like plateaus where like you may have like a great 7 minutes or a great 10 minutes that works every night. But to get to that like 35 or 45 minute set where you have people laughing and you don't like get burned out or burn the audience out. That is like the difference between writing a short story and a novel.
Yes.
Same difference, you know?
Amazing advice.
Yeah.
Brian Burkhardt, everyone, tell us where we could find more of you. And
Well, you know, it's so funny. Even though I am in the entertainment industry, I am kind of like also I'm in the manufacturing business. I manufacture gates and fences.
oh wow,
Yeah, I have like an exclusive contract with the city of Santa Monica. Yeah,
How did you get that?
the city council approved me like a month ago.
that's hilarious.
Isn't that great?
That's really great.
Yeah.
He got some high
Good for you, bro.
No, yeah. So you know, I have a lot of people that work for me,
Yeah,
And-
Chris.
He works for me,
That's
and
how I
like he's a
know.
partner.
Wow.
And I keep a lot of people working, and like I like, as a man in your 50s, like when I was younger, I was always like, like you don't know really what it is. It's weird. And then like when you're in your 50s, like all people want is you to be a provider. And if you're a good provider, provider, man, if you want to get the checks, you be a provider. Like it never fails.
Sprinkle.
Of course, it's like when you're younger, you're worried about your looks, all those things, and you can get away with it, and like, oh, he's cute, and this and that. When you're in your 50s,
you gotta survive. You gotta put food on the table.
No, it's like take people shopping. Like you want to make friends.
Yeah,
and that's true in life. Like no matter what problem you have in life, if you spread the money outside of like stomach cancer and like a few diseases. No, outside of stomach cancer and a few diseases, if you throw money at the situation, you'll either resolve it or make it more tolerable. And that's the way of the world.
That's great advice.
And that's great advice for men on how to get women.
Oh, God.
Y'all need to listen to Brian.
It works 100% of the time.
Y'all hear this?
Advice, man.
We have a lot of men in our fan base. Listen to what Brian is saying. Stop being dusty and crusty and
Well,
musty.
if you're young and good looking, whatever, it's a sliding scale,
But eventually that hairline might recede, the gut might come out.
Exactly.
Like, it's not going to just be about that. Just like with women, women, we get away with a little more, but
whatever.
fake.
And it's like that. It's, obviously the younger you are, the more you can get away with.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's the way of the world. That's all I can say.
So this has been, we do give an F.
We do give a F.
I'm Jaclyn.
I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Brian.
Thank you guys for watching.
All right, guys. Y'all are great.
Thank you, Brian, so
All right,
much.
cool.
Next session, therapish. How do you have self-respect and standards without offending people like friends and coworkers? Like just ways to stick up for yourself. I think that when you just do it in a warm way, like you're just not mean about it. Like if you stand up for yourself, you just don't be mean. It's very simple.
I don't think it matters. The other person doesn't matter in that situation, because if you have to demand self-respect, then it's for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just put your foot down. Don't take no shit. Don't start no shit, won't be no shit. But seriously, like self-respect is exactly what it sounds like. Like it's yourself and it's what you think you deserve, really. So that's kind of that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. We don't give a F.
I'm
podcast.
Stephanie.
I'm Jaclyn.
We love you.